And as I said before, uh, the Spagners were Seventh-day Adventists, which means they went to church on Saturday. And sometime I would ride with them just to see what it was all about. And there was a little girl there at the Seventh-day Adventist church. Her name was Patrick. No, that wasn't Patrick. Wasn't her last name? Her name was Pat. Anyway, her father was the minister, and in their religion, uh, uh, you couldn't even think about dating one of their daughters unless you was Seventh-day Adventist too. So I learned how to be a Seventh-day Adventist to see if I could date her too. So I went to the church, and in Sunday school they would have different lessons that you would take and stuff. And I passed them all. And once in a while, Mr. Spigner, to get the family out, he would put all the family together, and we'd jump in the car. And Los Angeles was about 60 to 70 miles from where we lived in Paris, California. And there wasn't many freeways back in those days. There was hardly any freeways. It was only highways. And we would all jump in the car. He had an old 54, I think it was either 53 or 54 Kaiser. You never heard of a Kaiser before, have you? A Kaiser was a car manufacturer. And he rebuilt the engine all in it, put a new engine and stuff. And so he was proud of his Kaiser. So we all jumped in his Kaiser and went all the way to LA or down on Imperial Highway to a church down there, a Seventh-day Adventist church down there. Later on, he rebuilt the engine of a 1955 Chevrolet four-door. But the best car he ever had was actually his wife's car. It was like a 51 or 52 Chevrolet Deluxe, 06 cylinder. That car ran and ran and ran. Dale, who learned to be a mechanic with his dad, Dale was the oldest Spigner son. It was three sons. The oldest was Dale, and then later the middle son was Renee, and the youngest son was Gary. Dale is dead today. He got killed. Renee and I still talk 2 or 3 times a week. Renee has become an unreal friend of mine that over the years that has always been there for me no matter what. He's been there. He's one of those people that's a genuine individual. There's very few people in this world that are genuine people. To give you an illustration of how genuine he is, after I got through traveling and I came home, he went to Vietnam, and after Vietnam he came home, and then he was trying to, being a Seventh-day Adventist, he couldn't work on Saturday, so there was a lot of jobs that he couldn't get, because most jobs, they wanted you to be able to work on Saturday if they wanted you to. And he being an absolute staunch Adventist, he wasn't working on Saturday. So I had learned after I came home from traveling, at that time, there was recap tires. A recap tire, I'm going to put a little clip on to show you what recapping tires was all about. Recapping tires was when they take old tires and they took a grinder and they grind the top of the old tire down after the tire was already wore out and the sides of the rubber was still good on the tire. They would put some more new rubber on top of the tire and put it in like a waffle iron and cook a new thread on the tire. They were called recaps. And so what I used to do is I would go around to the different gas stations and tire shops when people bought new tires, and when they took their old tires off their car, they was junked as far as the person that sold them the new tires was concerned. That was junk. So I would come by and pick out the ones that I knew that the recappers would buy, and the recappers would buy at five. They would give me $5 or $6 a piece for them. The ones that I knew that they would buy, I would come and do them a favor and haul them away for them, you know. And they was glad for me to come because they had, in most times, they had to pay to have them hauled off. So the less that they had to pay, the less they had to haul off, the less they had to pay. So it was a win-win all around. So I would pick up, I had a regular route that I'd go through, and I liked it that too, because after traveling for 5 years all over the country, it was hard for me just to sit in one place. I loved going to the different little towns, and I watched a lot of towns grow from little nothing towns to big metropolis towns. But anyway, when Renee came back from Vietnam, I needed somebody to help me work, you know. So, cause you know, sometimes you'd go in there'd be a big old pile of tires, and you'd have to go through them to find out which one was good and which ones was what. And I would pick out the good ones and roll them to him, and he'd stack them up on the truck and stuff until we had a load of tires to take to the recapper and stuff. And then he learned the business, and he still does that to this very day. Although there's no recapping anymore, because they start importing tires, and they start getting tires imported cheaper than they can recap them. And recap tires weren't really that good in the heat. A lot of times going across the desert and stuff, that cap that they put on there would fly off, and the tire would have a blowout. You know, so they was good back east for snow tires and stuff. When they put the snow tires or snow cap on it, that worked good for them and stuff. But in Vegas here, and even where I live in Las Vegas today. And here in Vegas, it was always been too hot in Vegas. In fact, a lot of times I used to come to Vegas to get the tires to take back to California. I grew up, I was born and raised in Southern California. I would get the tires, I'd get a load here, they would be glad to give them to me, and I would take them back to California and sell them. And along with getting the casings, I would also get whatever used tires that I would find. A lot of times where you get maybe 10 or 15 tires for recapping, there would be 4 or 5 that are good used tires that would still go on the road. Because a lot of times when people go in to buy their new tires, a lot of times only 2 of them is bad, or, you know, and they would get a whole set of 4, you know, so it was 2 that was still good. So anyway, I would get the good ones, and that's how I raised my family. I worked for myself. As long as I had a truck running, I was in business, because I would go around to the different gas stations and old tire shops and stuff, and pick up these old tires and stuff, and then I would save the good ones in my garage or whatever until I had a load, which is usually by the end of the week. I would have a load of used tires to take to different places, and I had people, because used tires is not many places you could go and say, give me 100 used tires. I mean, they had one called Lakin. Lakin was kin to Sears, and they picked up all the Sears and Roebuck stores, you know. Lakin, one of the Lakin brothers married one of the Sears family, and his deal in the marriage was he got all the tires from all the tire shops, so he had the biggest deal going, but then he could charge his price. And then a lot of times these little guys that had a little gas station, little tire shops and stuff, they couldn't leave to go buy no tires and stuff, so I was a welcome sight to come in and bring them to them, give them to them at a good price, and then I guaranteed them too. If they got something that wasn't no good enough, I would take it back and replace it with another good one too. So they all liked me, and I made a very nice living doing that. So you see, I was recycling before recycling was popular to recycle. But then again, I kind of grew up in the recycling business, because when I was a little kid, my dad had a wrecking yard. He had a wrecking yard in Gardena, California. He actually had 5 wrecking yards. He kept one, the biggest one, and he rented out the other 4. And he used to take the cars and send them to the mill. He would cut it. Back in those days, you would actually take a torch and you would cut the iron off the bottom of the car. All the cars had frames and stuff, so he would cut the frames off the bottom of the car, and that would pay more money. And then the thing, generators and radiators and stuff, which was copper, paid more money than other things. So you would separate the different metals and you take them in, and that's how he pretty much raised us until later on he got out of the tire business for one reason or another, and got out of the wrecking yard business, and he went into the tire business. The guy, Mr. Sam, a Jewish guy, that used to buy all the tires off the cars. You know, whenever you take the tires and the wheels off the car, you put them on the wrecking yard, and you take them over to Sam's place, and Sam would buy them all from you. So that's how Daddy got rid of them. So when Dad got out of the wrecking yard business, he went into business with Sam, because back then all of the tires had tubes in them. They had inner tubes in the tire. So, and some of the tires that came off of the junk cars, some of the tires were good, and then some of them were groovers. A groover was something where they would take a hot iron and they would groove a line that looks like the tire tread into the tire. And Mexico used to come and get them and buy as many of them that you could. So as a kid, Dad would have us come to work with him, because at first in junior high school and well, mostly junior high school, I was somewhat of a bad kid, let's say, and I would get kicked out of school sometime. And so rather than run the street and get into trouble, Dad would take me down to the tire shop where he was, and they would pay us 10 cents a piece to hand break down the tires. You would have a hand breaker. You put the tire on the ground. On top of this breaker, and you take a long bar on it, and you break the bead. Then you take 2 bars and you spoon the tire off the rim, and then you put the rim over on one pile, and you throw the tube over in another pile, and you threw another tire over to the other side of the tire pile. And they paid us 10 cents a piece to do that. But now, you got to remember, 10 cents a piece don't seem like nothing now. But in those days, you got a nice big candy bar for a nickel. A nickel candy bars was good. A soda, a 12-ounce soda was only 12 cents. And those Hostess Twinkies that you see, they was 12 cents, you know. And you could go to the restaurant and get bacon and eggs for like $2, you know, sometimes 95 cents. I remember when Dad used to stop at a hamburger stand, like McDonald's, hamburgers were like 15 cents, 10 cents a piece, you know. So anyway, I got to the point where I could do 50 tires a day, breaking them down. And, you know, some of the older guys or better guys, muscle-bound guys, they could do 100 or 200 a day, but they be flying. But I got to the point where I could do 50 a day, which was $5 a day. And for $5 for a kid that didn't have no rent to pay or no gas to buy, that was good money, you know. And I would at lunchtime, I would go with the big guys to the restaurant. You know, I'd pay 50 cents for me a nice slice of fresh strawberry pie, and, you know, and they had a meal called a French dip. A French dip was sliced beef on top of a French roll, and they would put an au jus sauce over the top of it, or either give you a bowl of that au jus sauce that you put on this French roll, and they would cut it, and you dip that sandwich with all the roast beef and stuff in that au jus. It wasn't as good, by the way. I thought it was at that time, but later on I learned Philadelphia cheesesteak, and that's a whole new ball game. But for right then, that was big time eating, you know. And you'd get a soda for, you know, back there at the restaurants, you know, a glass of soda was only 10, 11 cents, you know what I'm saying? So, man, you could go and eat good for a couple bucks, you know. That included dessert too, you know. So, anyway, that's how I got into the tire business after I stopped traveling and stuff. And I had, by going from door to door, when I was selling magazine subscriptions, you go from door to door. You go in the neighborhood, and you went from door to door, and you would tell people, "Hi, my name is Harry Smith. I'm quite sure you don't know me or anything, but I'm in the area today speaking to the people in regards to the junior youth program. Whereas we're selling these magazines to create points. You see, local reader service has given us the opportunity that if we could get 20,000 points or credits in a 6-week time, they would give us a scholarship to go to college. I'm from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm trying to get my pre-law student degree. And so what 3 magazines would you like to take? And I learned that there's a thing called law of average. A law of average is if you go to a certain amount of doors, you're going to find some people that buy. And by me having a lot of, as I said, my mom and pop had a mom and pop grocery store. So I was used to talking to people. I wasn't afraid to talk to people or stand and face people, look them in the eye, and talk to them. So I did very, very well in doing that. But in actuality, they paid us 30% of whatever we wrote. So when I was out selling magazines, I made good money. It was nothing for me to make $200 a week, which at that time, as I said, which was like in 1967. I graduated from high school in 1966. So I was out there in 1967, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. In fact, Martin Luther King was assassinated on my father's birthday, April 4th, 1968, and I was in New York when that happened. So those are the years that I was out there. Anyway, so when I came back and started the tire business and started, doing the tires, doing well in it, and then I got to the point where I had an opportunity to open a big tire shop. I'll show you later pictures